Welcome to the Dish Pig, where we go on a journey of discovery in the food and booze world. I'm your host, Nick Sherry, and we are back. We are back after an extended break, and boy, does it feel good to be bringing some new episodes your way. We've even had some special requests come in, and we might be taking the show on the road very soon, so stay tuned for that. And now, being that it's summer in this part of the world and you haven't heard from me in a while, I thought I would share my top 3 summer drinks that have been keeping me even-keeled by the pool. And for those in the Southern Hemisphere, I do apologise, but maybe this will get the juices flowing for later in the year. And just a quick note that these are not sponsored in any way. It's just what I've been drinking lately. So at number 3, I've gone with the Craigie Range Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand. Just can't go wrong with this one, and it happens to be always available at my local liquor store and sometimes Costco, actually. Number 2, an ice-cold 500ml bottle of Topo Chico spiked with some Tequila Tromba Blanco. There truly isn't a better cocktail out there this summer. And number 1, Mango Cart. The Mango Cart wheat beer from Golden Road Brewing. Seriously good stuff on a hot day, post-work, golf, swim, in that exact order. So to kick off this season, I sat down with fellow Australian Ed Moffatt, who in 2016 brought his take on coffee to sunny Southern California. He is the owner of Common Room Roasters, a specialty coffee roastery based out of Long Beach, California, and the owner and operator of Milligram Coffee and Kitchen in Costa Mesa. Common Room Roasters is a transparent operation in sourcing and roasting and brewing coffee, and they work with sustainable farmers all over the world. They're even on a mission to change people's perception of instant coffee. Yes, you heard me right. So, let's get into it. So Ed, thanks for agreeing to kick off the next season, I'm calling it, of the Dish Pig. It's great to finally get you on here.
Oh, it's good to be here.
What was the last thing you cooked for yourself?
Oh, it was only 30 minutes ago. Cooked myself some chicken tenders on the barbecue and cheeseburgers for the kids.
Ooh, just a rock solid go-to kind of dish.
Yep, little chicken salad, avocado, cucumber, little feta and cherry tomatoes.
Have you got any secrets for the burgers for the kids, or do you keep them kind of not too fancy because it's it's a kid-friendly meal?
We are a very very basic child eaters. They're just cheeseburgers. That's no onion, no ketchup, no nothing. They take them dry. That's but just getting the kids to eat can be a challenge anyway.
Now, being an Australian living over here in California, actually we should probably say there's we're sitting at Milligram HQ out on this beautiful patio on this lovely Monday evening.
It is.
But being an Australian living over in California and you're cooking these cheeseburgers, do you get a bit fancy about where you get your beef from?
Well, shameless plug. We're a member of the Butcher Box, so we get all the meat delivered every 6 weeks, all frozen and nicely packed, and then we kind of pick and choose every month on the website and what we want. So
nice little plug for the Butcher Box.
Yeah, no, they're good. Those guys, they do a great job, and when we moved here, we're a bit sort of, I don't know, we had wins and losses with some of the grocery stores, and there's really fancy butchers around.
Yeah.
But for the weekly shop, the Butcher Box came good. So, and they've got really good transparency stories. Like you can go onto their little website and find out where all the beef's coming from, and the lamb and the pork and the chicken. So
I remember Butcher Box during peak pandemic.
Oh, it was huge.
It was a waiting list. You couldn't sign up for it.
Yeah,
because everyone just jumped on board.
No, that's when we got it. It was no one wanted to go to the grocery store, so it was bring everything to you. And we did another one for the vegetables. That was I can't remember the exact name of it, but it was a farm to table box.
Yeah.
But I find the produce is so good in California. Like you can buy supermarket, strawberries, and right now it's peaches and all beautiful stone fruits. Like the stuff here in California is unreal. But the meat, you forget how good the Australian sort of meat industry is and how sort of clean and transparent it all is. Here it's, I don't know, again, wins and losses.
I know you kind of have to I find that you have to really plan out where you're going to be getting each individual product from, whether it's your fruit and veg from one place,
Totally.
your meat from another, seafood from another.
Yeah, it's can be. Yeah, I would do that. I buy certain foods from certain grocery outlets, and then certain ones from others. Definitely.
We're sitting outside Milligram here, but before we, jump into what you've built here in Newport Beach, Orange County, and even what you've got going on with Common Room Roasters in Long Beach, the question has to be asked. You are married with 2 kids.
Yes.
You bought the family, you and the family came over here 7-8 years ago?
Yes, it was 7 years in February, so 7.5 years.
But even prior to that, how did you kind of think you would end up running a cafe, a huge coffee roasting business in California? Take us back to where everything kind of, started off.
So, I know. People ask me this semi-regularly, how does this all sort of happen? If you, pulled me up 10 years ago and said, look, you'll be living in California, you'll be owning businesses there, I've got an American child, which is, it's all pretty sort of surreal to think back and piece it all together. And then obviously, I knew I was catching up with you today, and I was sort of reminiscing on a few things. And so it really started with Julia, my wife. She actually got a transfer for work.
Yep.
So, which sort of, we ummed and ahed on the roll and decided to go for it. We had one cafe in Melbourne at this time, on Queen's Road, and it was quite new. It had only been open for about just on 1 year. And
what was that one called?
It was called the Long Island Brew Bar.
Okay.
And just a sort of single island bench under one of the corporate towers in Queen's Road. It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But it was a big decision to sort of sell that off and cut the mooring lines and go.
But even it was setting up that business to begin with. What kind of prompted that desire?
So originally, I worked in hospitality pretty much since I left high school.
Okay.
So got into catering and worked at restaurants, and I worked in, if anyone's familiar with the Stokehouse down in St Kilda, I worked there for a couple of years. And then from there we opened a cafe, me and another guy opened a cafe called Woodstock in High Street, Armidale.
Yep.
So that was kind of the first foray into business ownership. We were young and stupid. We were 23 years old, and we sort of bought this thing on for cheap, and we sort of did it up ourselves and called in all our mates to do all the painting and repairs and all that sort of stuff, and got that open. I had that one for 9 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that was sort of... And during that 9 years, the specialty coffee thing kind of exploded.
Yeah.
When we started in 2003, there weren't a lot of boutique roasters in Melbourne. A lot of the coffees were still very Italian-inspired, and some of them were even imported from Italy. And sort of Italy was king as far as an origin story went. And then you only have to fast forward another sort of year and a half, 2 years, and all these sort of new age trendy roasters started popping up in Melbourne. And then the whole thing exploded. There was great new sort of, we call them third wave cafes now, but these new sort of contemporary style cafes and popping up, and new coffee brands emerging. And so through that 9 year period, we basically used a few of them as our journey went along. And then I sort of got involved on the coffee side, did a brief stint at Lavazza in Lavazza, Melbourne.
Yep.
And then during that time, they developed a local roasted sort of new brand. So I was part of their startup team, which was really cool. We basically had a warehouse in Melbourne, bought a roaster, just a teeny tiny one. Me and another guy had a small office in there, and we were basically armed with the tools that we needed to build this brand from scratch under the guise of Lavazza. All funded by Lavazza, which was makes life a bit easier.
Quite key.
Quite key, but yeah. So I mean, it wasn't quite, blank checkbook. Here you go, but it kind of almost was. And and then we sort of, then when my wife got this job, the guy that she was working for had a warehouse similar to the one that we were operating out of in Melbourne, and then so he said to me, look, would you be interested in, like, he'd seen what we'd done in Melbourne, and he goes, like, we could do this here. So obviously we opened this Long Island brew bar on the side, but we'd seen that model in Melbourne before, because I finished up at Lavazza and then went and did the Long Island brew bar thing after that. But then, so Julia took the job, came out to California, and we basically, again, bought a roaster. This one came from Portugal, took about 6 months to arrive, and then but in the meantime, we set this cafe up. It was called the Common Room at the start.
Yep.
And then it was teeny tiny. Like, it was in this great big empty warehouse full of blank walls, and I used to ride my skateboard around in there. It was there's nothing in there. It was nearly 4,000 square feet of space, and then the roaster arrived, and then I don't know, we kind of gradually just built it up.
You said something key when you were talking about Woodstock, and you mentioned that it's a third wave cafe, or like, so for those, and I'm still struggling to understand it.
Yeah.
When it comes to the waves of coffee and how that's been reflected through the cafe scene, not just in places like Melbourne, but other parts of the world, describe to me what these waves are. Break them down for me.
Yeah. So, and these are very broad, but basically, first wave was the initial, and these are all sort of based on, coffee's been around for, thousands of years. It's been, so excluding the actual, sort of discovery of the product itself, as far as cafes go, the first wave of sort of cafes was, probably early 1940s, World War II ends, all these countries like Italy and sort of Lebanon and Vietnam and all these sort of places basically get decimated by the war. So come 1952 or around that mark, these guys were, all these civilians were migrated to countries like Australia and other parts of the world. They'd be called refugees in today's language. But basically they turn up in the 1950s and open these little, these little coffee houses and pizza places and little Italian sort of clubs where they, there's photos of them, they're coming off the boats towing their little espresso machines and all that sort of stuff. So it's awesome. And so that's sort of the first wave. And then there, with all the Australians sitting around watching them, drink coffee all day going, well, that'll never catch on. So they're all in the pub. But and then the second wave is like your 70s.
Okay.
Everything got very Roman and very glamorous, and all the drinks were, out came the waistcoats and the terrazza floors and some of these sort of, brunettis and these kind of big sort of glamorous sort of coffee houses really got going, and that would have been the inception of probably Starbucks and stuff like that here. Yeah. So that was sort of the second wave where it became sort of commercial. Yeah. And they were very origin stories weren't really openly discussed. Coffee was sort of on a need-to-know basis. It was just, kind of heavy, dark roasts and sort of, and everyone was sort of the same. Where it all sort of came from was pretty not really spoken about. And then their kids is our age group, and we're sort of, so now 90s, 2000s, another generation along, and then all of a sudden, sort of the penny dropped, and probably was a twofold thing. Like the Scandinavian guys, had a great design sense. So their cafes became really minimal and really beautiful, and really and those countries drink so much coffee. Okay. With all the sort of limited daylight and stuff like that. So they sort of led the charge from the design standpoint. But then people sort of realised going where the coffee's roasted doesn't really matter if the roasting's been done well. So isn't freshest better? Mm-hmm. So then roast dates and things started to get discussed. Right. And then it was like Colombia versus Africa versus, all these different origins, and this sort of, and so that in a nutshell, the design sense, the style of service, and then the freshness of the coffee combined with the information of the origins, creates this third wave coffee.
So that's when things start to get very technical,
Yeah.
a bit nerdy, a bit, just going deep, like deep diving on all these different...
Yeah, and I think the wine industry was a really good forerunner to all that.
Yeah.
Like, if you go back, 30 years, we've got house red and house white. And now it's like, we've got Pinot and Merlot and Shiraz, and then we've got Cabernet, and then we've got, Chardonnay and Sauv Blancs and Chenin Blancs and all this kind of stuff. And all these, back then, you used to have to be like a real wine nerd to know those words. And now it's like pretty general information. And even that's starting to happen in the coffee industry. Like, I like dark roast. I don't like dark roast. I like blends. I like single origins. I don't like drip coffee. I like espresso. Like, the pretty basic coffee drinker now has got their little order worked out.
Yep.
Of what they like. So yeah, that's really been the shift. Is the thirst for knowledge from the consumer, and then there's also a bit of flexing going on from the baristas and the roasters around town, saying, "Look, I know more," and we're putting our information out for all to be seen to sort of exert expertise.
Yeah.
But not everyone's doing that. We sort of do a little bit of everything. But I think the consumer wins in the end. Like, the farmers get highlighted. The roasting techniques are now on show. Everything. The packaging's got to be slick.
Yeah.
The transporting's gotten a lot more efficient with tracking shipping containers, and you got Google Earth to look at farms. Like, the whole thing's just exploded. Like, it's been a big 30 years for coffee.
Is it possible to think about what a fourth wave would involve?
Yeah, it sort of is, and it gets talked about a little bit. The single serve thing is really coming along.
Is this kind of like if you ordered like a single estate kind of wine, or is it more in the way that it's served? And because I've kind of seen a few like very la-di-da coffee bars opening up where it's you sit up there and order a $25 coffee and it's
it's interesting.
It's all dripping in front of you.
Yeah, there's a bit of that. Like, a lot of the theatre and stuff that goes into that. Some of the fermentation techniques, like, it's the real work's being done at farm level at the moment. You've got sort of anaerobic fermentation where they sort of lock out the oxygen during the fermentation process, and it's getting really kind of crazy at the production level.
Okay.
And they create different sort of flavours and aromas and textures and things like that. There's a lot of single serve stuff coming onto the market. Obviously, Nespresso have been doing a really, global effort on that sort of single serve coffee. Now, there's some new technology that's allowing, single sort of like roasters like us to produce things like really high-end instant coffee, which is really interesting. So, little rip and tip, which is
it's probably the last thing I'd probably end up hear someone like you saying, because you'd think instant coffee is and truly a thing of the past.
It is scary good. It's all the baristas turn on their seats when we say this, but no, we've got 2 or 3 blends that we get send it off for freeze drying, and it's cool. What else? There's everything from, and the super automation is the other one that's kind of happening. So,
that's right. Someone just got shot on the street.
Got shot. See, this is live. You can tell this is live on the streets of America.
It was fireworks, just in case anyone was.
Wow. Okay.
So instant coffee.
Yeah, so
instant coffee.
Yeah, but also, the super automatic stuff is really, like, the computer age is obviously, going, at 100 miles an hour. So, those bean to cup single button super automatic machines used to be pretty terrible.
Okay.
Now they grind to order, they tamp to certain pressures, like you put real milk in them. They used to be powdered milk, like. So if you had an office with, 200 employees, you can put a pretty good solution in there now, which is, it's kind of scary because we love the craft of barista and all that sort of stuff, but it's a high-tech world that we live in. Like, it's getting pretty wild. I mean, they're expensive, but we see every year at the coffee expos, there's some crazy new machine that you're like, oh my God, that's actually the barista killer. There it is.
Well, I guess, I mean, yeah, like I can definitely see how, you know, like what's available to make a coffee at home is, you know, it's advanced incredibly well, but they still need the beans.
Need the beans. No, the thing about people come to, if I had to change one thing, like, you know, I go, you need good coffee. It needs to be fresh. It needs to be ground to order. Like, so don't pre-ground coffee. Yeah, there's some, you know, nitro flushing and some clever techniques they use, but, you know, freshly roasted, ground to order. Now, in America, certain parts of America, you get fluctuation in water quality, so you need good water. So California's not too bad, but we do treat the water pretty heavily here to get it to the point where we're happy to run it through, you know, $20,000 espresso machine, because it does build up and do damage.
Yeah.
And then I just think having, like, if you're going to buy one thing, buy scale. Weigh your beans. Know how much to use. Know how long your brew times are. Whether it's Chemex, you know, French press, pour over, any of that sort of stuff. Without a scale, you're kind of screwed. So that's the one. If you're going to buy someone who's a coffee nerd, one little piece of kit to get started, a really nice set of scales with a timer on it.
And then if we look at when you first came over, you have the space, as you were talking about, to set up the roasting business.
Yep.
For anyone that is either thinking about it or trying to imagine it, how the fuck do you go about ordering a giant piece of equipment that actually gets these beans? And I want you to kind of break down actually how they, you know, how you do roast the beans.
Yeah.
But how does one going about? It's not like you're jumping on Amazon and ordering one of these things, I would imagine.
No, it's not coffee roasters near me.
But talk us through where, because you've since got another one, I believe. But talk us through where this first one came from.
So the first one was made in Portugal. So we
Are they quite well known for?
They're called Jopa. They're pretty old school Portuguese company. They've been around for 50 years, maybe longer. But they like any sort of product, there's distributors, you know, and they sort of carry a few brands, and you sort of look through them. So we chose that one, and it was it's pretty good. It hasn't missed a beat. It's so they build these things to order pretty much. So it took probably took about 6 or 8 months to arrive. So in the meantime, what was really cool actually, in the meantime we had the cafe open and rolling because had the space and had all the stuff, and so we thought, let's turn the lights on and get into it. So what was really cool was that we actually bought coffee off all these different roasters around California and even interstate, and really like road tested all these different roasters that we knew were kind of like doing a pretty good job. Right. It was really good actually. It kind of set us up for, you know, what we wanted to do, what we didn't want to do, everything from packaging design and some of the messaging from brands, like, you know, whether they're really sort of hipster or grungy or rock and roll. Like, we were looking at all these different people because we were going to enter the market. So we kind of had this sort of zoomed out vision of, right, okay, if all these guys are doing this, let's do that. Yeah. You know, and sort of we wanted to sort of do it a little bit different. Obviously, coming from Melbourne, our background was different. Like, the way we roast is a little bit different, and I can talk to that in a minute. But so this thing arrives, as you can imagine, massive wooden crate, like forklifts and.
Because it's custom built to the size of of your space, or is it more like the volume that you're looking to?
The volume per batch.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So they sort of turn up. So you've got all these roasters, and they go from 500 gram to 1 kilo, 3 kilo, 5 kilo. They go up to 500 kilos in one batch, and a batch is anywhere from 10 to 16 minutes in time. So a session of roasting is multiple batches over and over and over, and building up this sort of finished product. And so this one was a 15 kilo roaster, which at the time I thought was pretty big. Came on a big truck, and I thought, oh god, it's a pretty serious bit of kit. The ones we'd used in Melbourne, we had a 5 kilo and a 10 kilo, and then there was we had a 35 kilo, but we used to rent that one off someone else because we didn't have this facility. Yeah. These facilities they're not just sort of lying around. So anyway, so this thing arrived, and we open up the box, and it's all damaged. We're like, oh my god, like this thing, we've been waiting 8 months for this thing. It's got a huge dent in one side. Boxes all smashed. Like it had taken a whole bunch of damage in the shipping from Portugal to Orange County. So that was kind of a first kind of holy shit moment. We're like, oh my gosh, like this thing, you know, we've paid for it in full, and you know it's all damaged. So we had to open it up and sort of pull it all apart and order spare parts. So we had to rebuild the thing before we even used it, which was.
How kind of, I mean, what kind of damage are we talking? Like, was it stuff that was actually impacting your kind of roasting times or anything, or was it more cosmetic?
A bit cosmetic. We were worried that maybe some of the drive shafts had been bent and the barrel wouldn't spin, so perfectly straight. For anyone who's listening, if you can imagine a coffee roaster is like a huge sort of tumble dryer, like goes round and round, you put the beans in, and then like popcorn, coffee kind of cracks, so heats up, cracks after probably about 9 minutes, and then after the crack, it basically caramelizes and roasts off to that beautiful brown colour that we all know and love, and the flavours and aromas sort of start to develop, and then you drop it out of the barrel into a big cooling tray, which is the shots you always see on these Instagrams of the big blend mixes going around. So that's actually post-roast cooling.
It reminds me of those. Remember those arcade games where you'd put like the coins in, and those things would kind of push forward towards stacks of money, and some things would get pushed over the edge. You remember those things?
No, but it sounds amazing.
There were these stupid things where like there'd be other prizes on there, but sometimes like stacks of like $2 coins, $1 coins, and these little kind of like, how would you describe it? Like little shifter lever things that would push out at different times and to different lengths. And
not like the skill tester, not the claw.
Not the claw.
No.
Similar venue that would have the claw.
Okay.
But I'm gonna have to look that up and figure out what it was. But yeah, because I get the same sensation as it's almost like it's lightly kind of
So it's cooling it
caressing
down.
These beans.
Yeah, it's cooling it down and it's stopping the cooking process. So this thing was all banged up when we got it. So that was a big challenge, and then basically got it repaired, got it going, and it's like anything, a new oven or a new piece of any piece of manufacturing equipment. You got to learn how to use it and learn how to use it, like the exact one. Like how it sits in the room, and every roof is different, which makes your exhaust different lengths and thicknesses, and you got wind and so you sort of develop a set of, I guess, guidelines of how that particular roaster roasts in that particular room.
Okay.
Because there's different. Like the guy I used to roast under in Melbourne, he would measure like atmospheric pressure and all this kind of crap in the room. He was like a full he took it a bit far.
Yeah.
But
good coffee though.
Great coffee. No, it was very good. I was off, on Facebook in the corner like, oh, tell me when you're ready.
Yeah.
No, So you do sort of build up a routine for the particular room, and so that was cool. And once we got it going, I was really happy with how quickly we pulled together a really solid blend.
Yeah.
We kept the single origins going in the cafe, and then we developed this blend called the Brunswick blend, which was it was a little recipe that I'd worked on back in Melbourne and a couple of other roasters. It was similar. I liked the profile, I liked the balance, I liked the versatility of it. So they're like, okay, well let's build a blend, and I was like, okay, revert to the old trusty. So we built this sort of blend of kind of replica of what we'd been doing in Melbourne, and so because it came out of Melbourne, the recipe sort of idea came from Melbourne. We, or my time in Melbourne, I should say, we called it the Brunswick blend, named after a iconic coffee suburb back home.
Yep.
And then, so we started turning that out, running it through the cafe. People are loving it, just going, this is such a solid drink. And a guy who started working for us said, hey, do you want to go to Portland? There's this America's Best Espresso contest.
Okay, yeah.
And I was like, okay, I've never been to Portland. Like, I've only lived in America for about 6 months. The roaster's only, been bedded in and recently commissioned. So we I went okay, and we jumped on the plane. I booked 2 tickets. Oh yeah, and it was at this thing, one of the coffee expos, and the heats were on the Thursday, and qualifying Thursday heats, some heats and semis on Friday, and the finals were on Saturday.
Is this different from because I've come across like the best barista competitions?
Similar. In the same arena.
Right, but this is more like you're just making a very kind of simple coffee over and over just to showcase the actual beans and
three
and the
espresso
blend.
shots per round, one for each judge.
Okay, yeah.
And then there was 8 rounds. So
Okay.
it's a little bit of a barista contest as well to be pulling like perfect shots.
Yeah.
But that also shows the like well-rounded nature of an espresso blend to be able to pull perfect shots, and that kind of shows its consistency in the roasting and the blending as well. So,
Right.
So we so we're in Portland and we went out and had an absolute bender on the first night. I was like, okay, we've got the heats tomorrow, and I wake up in the morning, I'm in this horrible hotel room going, oh my God, I'm in Portland and all these weirdos walking everywhere, and we go into this auditorium and we've just got like 2 bags off the shelf, right? Like all these guys with these competition blends, like they've picked all these white tip geisha coffees coming from these mountains that they only produce coffee once every millennium. And we're like, no, just grab a couple of bags of Brunswick.
Just grab a couple and
jump on the plane. We'll
throw them in the carry-on.
Go and have a few frothies in Portland. So we got the frothies out of the way on the first night, turn up to the heats, and what Iran, who works for us, was, we were trying to dial in these shots, and we're sitting there going, it doesn't taste any good, and we're sort of probably the hangover in the mouth, probably not doing us any favours on trying to test the palate. And then
Palate was a little bit off that morning.
Palate was off. And then anyway, so we weren't happy with it, and we're like, okay, well, it's too late now. We go back to the hotel room, and our slot was like 2 o'clock or something. We get back in the taxi, go back to the auditorium, and I don't know what happened, but we just started pouring their shots, and they just tasted like gold. Like, I'm just looking around going, what did you do? And he's like, I didn't do anything. And I'm like, this is good. Like, I don't know what just shifted.
Same machine, same everything.
Same everything. We were just like, oh my God. So I think we changed the dose slightly, and we did a couple of little things on the machine itself, but because everyone has to use the same machine, and it wasn't one that we were that familiar with. It was the manufacturer that sponsored the event.
Right.
So, and I won't say who it was, but they make shit machines. Anyway, so all of a sudden we're good here. Anyway, round 1, we get through. I think there was 64 roasters we started off with. Make it through the first round. Okay.
And this is all roasters from the US, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So 64 into 32, we go again. And it's literally winner, left or right. So, like, I go against you.
Yeah.
And it's, so it's a bracket, and you work your way down. And so we're like...
And they're making these decisions pretty quickly, just like, they drink the shot and then...
3 judges. So you get drinkability, texture, and flavour.
Okay.
Right? So they go drinkability, give you a score, texture, give you a score. And it's literally... Two versus 1.
Bang.
Common room win. Whatever. Whoever, roaster X, you lose.
Yep.
And so we started making our way through these rounds, and I'm sitting there going, this is kind of crazy. Like, we're down to 32, another one. And then there was this roaster that we know quite well, and it was one of the roasters that we'd actually used in the cafe.
Okay.
In that sort of preliminary sort of research stage.
Yeah.
I thought, these guys are good. Like, they make good coffee. They've been doing it a long time. We got full marks. Knocked him off. 3-zip.
Wow.
And this guy was like... I could see him looking at me going, you were buying our coffee like 2 months ago. So anyway, so that was kind of cool. And then I'm ringing my wife, and I'm like, hey, she was actually at a wedding, and I go, hey, I'm not coming home, because if I get one more round, we're into Saturday, the finals.
Staying for the finals.
We hadn't even booked the flights for Saturday. We thought, oh yeah, Friday will do. We'll go Thursday. We'll do Thursday, Friday in Portland.
Yeah.
Peel back Friday night. Anyway, so Julia's, on her phone, because I was booking the flights through her account, and so she's getting us flights, and we had to go change hotels and all this kind of stuff. So we'd made it to the finals, and then, again, cut a long story short, 16-8, 4, it got down to the last 2.
So you were in the final.
We're in the final.
The final 2.
1-on-1. And it was like, and they've got your hands like a boxer, and the winner is like, and you got people cheering, and there's all like crowds, and like it was wild. And anyway, unfortunately, got the silver. But I thought, yeah,
devastating.
Yeah,
fantastic effort though. Jeez.
Yeah, so 6 months in, we were America's Best Espresso, 2nd place.
Not bad going.
And then that kind of set us up. Like, that was a big moment. And then phones started ringing.
Yeah.
Where do I buy the blend? And we put these nice little, the organisation gave us these little silver medal stickers to put on the bags.
Yes, yeah.
And then, so they went well in retail and online. And then from there, we'd developed a single origin program and done some other stuff. But that was the day that we sort of realised we make good blends. From that point onwards, we've just had a real focus on espresso blends, and honestly, in America, with such a heavy drip coffee culture, espresso's been the one that's really on the rise.
Right.
So that was our little trip to Portland. Got a really ugly trophy, which is devastating. It's like this turquoise green crystal thing.
I was going to say, is it one giant bean?
It's not. It's horrible. It's like got wizard stars all over it, and it's got like alligator skin base. It's just.
Oh.
I said, should we just go to the trophy shop and buy a trophy and just like stick it up on the counter? Well, it's on display. For anyone listening, it's on display at Common Room Roasters, and we're very proud of it. But not something that I don't know. Whoever designed it, and they sat down one day and went, okay, that's the trophy. That they need to not be designing any more trophies.
And because that final was on the Saturday, I've got to ask: did you end up going out on the Friday night, just kind of give it like another little
Friday
little push?
Night focus now because we were Thursday night was
big
the
day
night
tomorrow.
We got first night fever, so we lit it up Thursday.
Yeah.
Friday night we're like, oh gosh, like we're half a show here.
Couldn't sleep,
and didn't get the all clear to stay Saturday night. We were lobbying for it.
Okay.
No, after life, got the please come home please from the it was cool, and Portland's a great coffee city. Like, it was really cool to win it, or second place up there.
Is it there every year?
No, it moves around.
Tours around,
but yeah, obviously Portland, being the home of Starbucks and Stumptown and Nike, and Portland's got a lot of rich history. And it was really cool to sort of go up there and immerse in the coffee culture and have this sort of expo going on at the same time, and then I'd like to say walk away with some silverware, but walk away with green turquoise glassware.
It sounds very Portland-esque.
It is actually. When I think about it out loud, it's exactly what Portland would design.
And then, so at what point, because that first location where you started roasting, you had the small cafe in there. At what point did you realise, okay, it's time to start growing this a bit? Like, you'd been eyeing off expanding, building another roasting facility. I guess that came simultaneously with opening up Milligram. Like, talk us through how all that kind of unfolded.
So it was kind of weird actually. So we had obviously the space we were in. It had this big, spacious cafe and this quite tight roasting facility. And we were all and the roasting was the one that was sort of providing all the revenue, and and sort of was the scalable idea, So that was being pretty widely discussed. Going, okay, well, there's more customers coming on, and the customers that we've got are expanding in their own right. Some people who had 1 or 2 cafes have now got 3 or 4, and we're attracting some really nice clientele, and I was sort of just tracking the volume, going, okay, like, we're growing at this rate here. If we get to this point, X, we can't physically do that out of this facility.
Yeah.
So we sort of tried to pull it early and go, okay, well, then we need a bigger machine to be able to make more coffee in a quicker time frame. So bigger machine requires more space, it's higher ceilings.
Do you name your machines, by the way?
I do, actually. I've got Janice.
That's the first one?
Yeah, Janice Jopper.
Okay, okay.
And then we've got Betty, who's the new one. She's Big Betty. She gets a little angry, Betty, but she's learning to fall in line. No, they're beautifully made, like anything new and nice, and they're also like they're bought from really reputable brands. Like they're in perfect condition when you get them, and it's So we sort of just mapped out the volume and just sort of thought, okay, well, this is where this is going to, we need this kind of space. And that's kind of, that increase in footprint got us looking around into other suburbs.
Yep.
Obviously, Newport Beach is a beautiful place to live, and it was great for us to launch our brand, but, pretty expensive per square foot. So, and we're looking at Long Beach going, it's halfway to LA, it's halfway to Orange County. It's got a shipping port, so all the green bean, when it comes in, we store all that green bean in Long Beach anyway.
Yeah.
The real estate's cheaper, And then this beautiful building sort of presented itself that ticked all the boxes. We need wide streets for the trucks and because they can't really be in these sort of narrow streets. But so this building it sort of found us as much as we found it. And then, but while I was on the search, I was looking through real estate websites, and I had this guy sort of helping me out looking for a spot, and he said, "What about this building?" And I said, "Well, it's not really suitable for a roastery, but it's a beautiful building." And I said, "Are you telling me that's available?" And he goes, "Well, not yet, but it will be in like October or whenever it was." And I said, "This would be an amazing spot for a cafe."
Right.
And he goes, "Well, okay, do you want to meet the guy?" And so this was almost by accident. And then so I was like, "Yeah, I can't meet the guy." And so we met and we talked about it. And this was a fully functioning dentist when I looked at it.
Right.
No decking, no patio, no lights, none of this stuff that you can see here tonight. But and so I said to Julia, I promise, after Woodstock and Long Island Brew Bar and all this kind of stuff, I will never do another cafe. I promise, right? So I said, "Honey, I want to go show you something." She's like, "Oh yeah," thinking it's a roastery.
Okay.
And I said, "Oh, I found a really good building. Come and have a look." She drives down here and she's like, "It's a bit tight. Like, how are you going to fit it all in?" I said,
"That is not going to fit Janice."
"That's not going to fit Janice, or definitely not Betty." And Betty had been ordered at this point, so we kind of knew what we're dealing with. And anyway, so but I said, "No, this would be a cafe." And she's like, "Oh dear." I said, "Why?" And she goes, "We have to do it. This is a cracker spot."
Straight away.
In. She goes, "I see it." She's like, "Okay."
Yeah.
So right when I'm at the busiest point of my life, trying to get common room sort of packed up and moved, we decided to do this just as it's sort of supposed to be a side hustle, but it's kind of, it blossomed into so much more. But But then these things take time, as you know, permits and all the sort of all the red tape that you've got to go through. So we had these two pots on the boil sort of at the same time, and we were sort of hoping that these two asteroids would not collide. Well, of course, as luck would have it, so we had two construction sort of permits in with the council at the same time, and applying for all different sort of use permits and stuff like that. So I learnt my way around the city websites.
I was going to say two different cities, two different counties.
All of that, 2 different cities, 2 different counties, 2 different permits, 2 different uses. Had to go and stand in front of the Long Beach the quarterly council meeting,
right,
and tell them why that they should let us do common room in this building for what's called a change of use permit. It was unreal. It was like, I felt like I was in the United Nations. This building was massive, like all in their little desks with their little name tags, all the councillors.
And of course, first thing you're like, so we went to Portland. We got really pissed on the Thursday night. It's like, bear with me. Hey,
I brought look what I've got on my bag. This lovely turquoise plate. This is why. This is
the reason we have to change this dentist into a cafe.
Yeah. No, well, that was for Long Beach.
Oh, sorry for the.
But the city of Costa Mesa was, this is part of a redevelopment of this centre. As you can see, it's all been done up and it's looking really good. But so we were able to sort of embed into that overall sort of gentrification of all this sort of stuff. And so we but it was a busy time. It was there were times where I thought, have I bitten off more than I can chew here? It was kind of, it was a lot to get through, but day by day it was kind of just, I don't know, lots of to-do lists, lots of people to call, lots of things to organise. And then Milligram opened first, which was kind of cool to get that open, because Common Room in Newport Beach had just closed, and 2 weeks later Milligram opened.
Oh, it was that close together?
Yeah, it was that close together.
Wow.
So then all the baristas roll straight out of there.
Yep.
They have a week off, then they roll in here and they start setting the bar up here, and they all start getting the onboarding going here. So that was really cool. All of our sort of regular customers and clientele from that, the old roastery, because it was so close, just basically most of them just transferred straight across here, and it was, they walk in and see their barista from the other place, serving the coffee that they love. G'day Barry, just the usual, like on the first morning.
Yeah.
So it was kind of, nice. And then And then obviously being in Costa Mesa, not Newport, we've met so many people. We've been so lucky to, the city has really thrown their arms around us and got behind Milligram and all that it is. So it's, then about, that was in June. So that's just gone 1 year. And then
you had your 1 year birthday last week.
That was pretty fun. It was live music and lots of beer and wine and frivolity. And then in November, after June, the Common Room roastery opened in Long Beach. So and in that meantime, we were renting a roaster up in LA because.
Betty hadn't arrived yet.
Betty hadn't arrived.
Yeah,
she was Betty. Oh, that was an ordeal the day that Betty arrived. But
what happened?
So this truck turns up. I can't even. I'm getting PTSD thinking about this. So it's the one day in Southern California. It's pissing with rain. I'm like, it hasn't rained for 100 days.
It rained a lot this winter.
This was the start.
When it does rain, it rains all day and all night,
Yeah.
and that storm slowly just rolls through.
Well, I was like, Julia, I get this phone call going, this guy's like yelling at me in Spanish on the phone. He's like, the roaster. I'm going, it's arrived. And I'm like, it's 10 o'clock at night. This guy's
Betty's right.
Wait for this, driven direct from Chicago. Direct.
Okay.
2 guys, one in the cabin, one driving, rotating through the night, haven't stopped all the way.
Wow.
Right, and so I'm
solid 21 hours of driving.
So this guy was not really going to go, hey, can we just like call it? Because he wanted to unload and reload and go back, and I'm like, mate, okay. So anyway, I get in the car, I got my rain jacket on, driving up the highway to Long Beach. So I need someone to get a forklift. I don't have a forklift.
At 10 o'clock at night.
Tough. Forklift driver, 10 p.m. So I ring one of the builders and I'm like, hey, can you send one of you guys down here to drive the forklift? We knew it was coming that week, so we'd rented the forklift.
Okay.
So it was
forklift was there, yep.
But not just a normal forklift, like a big psycho tractor one.
Yeah.
Like it had a minimum tonnage of X, whatever it was.
Ones that trained professionals need to operate.
Yeah, proper. This is not the local carpet warehouse with the forklift. This is pretty serious stuff. So we get there, and then the truck's turning around the corner, and the truck is so big it gets wedged. The truck gets stuck, right? So I'm sitting there going, the truck is stuck. I go down there. They're all yelling and screaming. All the neighbours have come out. It's wedged between this van and a wall. The truck was so long that we couldn't get it we couldn't get around the corner in the street because the guy's following Google Maps or whatever. And we're like, mate, go this way. The road's twice as wide. He's obviously taking the shortest path from the freeway. And anyway, so this guy just goes, fuck it, and just drops the hammer and just crunches this car. Like literally, the car is just...
The car next to it?
No, the car that he's wedged in against.
Yeah.
He just puts the foot down and just drags this car up the street. Like just crunches this poor Prius, right? And just leaves a note on the windshield. I'm like... that's a bit more than a note, mate. You've just like totally wiped this guy's car.
Did the note just say sorry?
No, it had all their trucking credentials and whatever. And he goes,
okay,
we're insured and whatever. I'm like,
this is covered.
I'm sitting there going, it's pissing with rain. It's midnight. I'm like, this is not cool. So anyway, so get the thing. We open the roller door at the back. No. First of all, then we can't open the roller door because it's got this security lock on it. So we've got to go and find bolt cutters. So we're walking around Long Beach, the sketchy suburb of Long Beach, asking for
it's pretty sketchy there.
Asking for people if they've got bolt cutters. I'm like, we couldn't look sketchier. I'm in a black rain jacket, covered in rain. It's midnight. Excuse me, mate, got any bolt cutters? Everyone's like, mate, arrest this man. He's about to do something very evil. So that went, anyway, so the builder guy went back to his truck or whatever, found something. So he got a hammer and a chisel and we broke the lock. Rolled the door up. The roaster is so far at the back, we can't get it off. Can't drive the forklift into the truck because we don't have a ramp.
Right.
So we go and get these crazy snap straps, got the forklift, and we're like strapping a strap to a strap to a strap. Highly dangerous. Like, again, pissing with rain, I'm standing back so far back going, if that strap snaps, that is going to be like a missile going through the air, right? What do you know? So the guy's pulling it, full, like wheel spinning the forklift, trying to get this thing. What do you know? Snap. This strap went through the air like a torpedo.
Oh, shit.
Right, misses the driver, and I'm like, okay, everyone, time out. Like, people are going to die. This is only a coffee roaster, right? So the guys went off to a shipping yard. I said, I'm calling it. This is not working.
Yeah.
So off to a shipping yard, and they slept the night or did what, I don't know, whatever they did, and then they came and then they paid someone to drive a forklift into the truck and move it to the edge.
Right.
And then deliver it to us in the next morning. So then the big crazy monster forklift could get it off.
Yeah.
And then get it in. But so that was that. And then what do you know? We open this thing up. It's all in pieces. As in, like, it's missing the whole feeding tube. So we're missing 2 cartons from Chicago. Right. So I'm sitting there going, this is Janice all over again. We got the damaged roaster first time. Now we've got the one that's incomplete. So anyway, we eventually got all the stuff we needed and fitted into the building, and it was so big we had to not finish the build out of the walls because we had to get the roaster in because you couldn't.
And then build around it.
Had to build the roaster around it, like all the glass panels and all the roofing and everything. So it was, and at the same time we're trying to run this brand new cafe through the winter, and so it was a pretty.
Was that one of those moments where you were kind of thinking, "What the hell am I doing?
What the hell am I doing? Surely there's an easier way to make a living than this." Sitting there going, I should have just listened at high school and gone to uni. But this was it's worked out. It's been great. But if you ever see it, it's a bloody beautiful machine in a really beautiful room. People nearly died to get it there, but it's. I just thought I was so glad that none of our employees were there. That would have been a serious HR breach.
Did anyone? Did you get any grief from the Prius owner the next day?
I've never actually asked. Actually. But it was a pretty detailed. But what I loved is that the guy had this pre-prepared slip, so I'm must happen all the time.
Yeah,
just registration numbers, and it stuck to the window.
Slap it straight on.
It was just like, we've just crunched your car. Call us for a new one. Regards, whatever freight company. It was. But anyway, so that was our introduction to the locals at Long Beach.
Okay.
So, but they've rallied. They get around us now.
Can we talk about beans for a second?
Yeah.
Talk about how you source them, where you source them from.
Yeah.
I guess there's probably ethical companies out there and maybe not so ethical companies out there when it comes to making sure that the farmers are looked after.
Yeah.
All of that kind of stuff. But talk us through what your process is when it comes to sourcing your the green beans.
Yeah, so it's probably the most important thing in our operation is the coffee itself. I mean, I know that sounds extremely obvious, but it's people, if you take really crappy coffee and perfectly roast it, you've got perfectly roasted shit coffee. Mm-hmm. Like, there's no sort of saving it at the roasting sort of level. So it's obviously, it's the seed of a fruit, so it's seasonal. We have different volumes required for all different sort of uses, which means that you buy obviously different amounts, and then it's all a scalable thing. So obviously the more you buy, the cheaper it gets. Usually. And then, then based on that, you've obviously got different harvests at different times of the year. So obviously they're mostly equatorial nations, so around the equator, and all their harvests are different through the different months of the year, and they all take different amounts of time to get to America.
Yep.
Now, so basically, okay, to sort of simplify what we do, so we have an endless supply of Colombia.
Okay.
Right, so we literally try and forecast a whole year of what we're going to buy for Colombia. These are our blend ingredients anyway. So we go, okay, so from harvest to harvest, is X amount of volume. Mm-hmm. Try and factor in incremental growth or whatever that may be, and then try and find a coffee that has that amount from. So now we're kind of lucky that we've bought year on year on year, so we've got some really good relationships built up. But to your question, when you are starting out, it's really hard to find good green at a good price that's been ethically sourced, that you actually have some transparency on where it actually came from and what its origin story is.
Right.
Because you're buying such low amounts that you kind of get in the dregs of what everyone else is not buying.
Yeah.
So that's sort of how you start out, but then as your volume grows, you get a bit more buying power and a bit more sort of repetition in your sourcing. Now you can obviously, like the roasters we talked on earlier, they're distributors, so they're green bean importers, and they basically connect the roaster to the farmer through their importing channels. Now, it used to be sort of a dirty word to say, I just buy all my stuff through importers, but at the end of the day, like we buy a mix. We buy some of the stuff that we buy full container loads. We just basically buy it direct. But even then, I've got some guys that I use to actually do the importing, like the paperwork, basically, and get it on the water and get it into the docks and stuff like that. So, but we're just basically ordering in full container loads. And once you do full container loads, you get really good. Like, for instance, all the Columbias that are about to arrive. I mean, they were bought or they were booked so long ago that the farmer basically for the last half of the crop cycle it was sold. So he was growing it for us.
Okay.
And we've done that year on year on year. So he basically says, "What, next year?" And I'm like, "Yeah, and the year after and the year after." So I'm actually going over there later this year to kind of hang out with some of these guys and these families.
Fantastic.
So it's kind of cool.
So first time you'll be meeting them in person?
For those guys, I've met a few of them. They've come here.
Okay. Yeah.
So they and obviously at these trade shows and expos and stuff like that, they're all sort of all these importers love to highlight the farmers and really connect them. And obviously, again, technology. There's FaceTime and Zoom and like we have a lot of. It's not too different to what we're doing right now. Sitting across the table from each other. It's just digital, and and it's so nice. A couple of the guys at work speak Spanish, so they're the translator, and I sort of fire off all the questions, and they, I can tell that they're talking shit on me behind my back, but it's all good. It's it's about a long time ago, or back in that sort of second wave, I know that there would have been some really grubby coffee deals going down.
Yeah.
But now, obviously, coffee is a commodity traded on the market. So there's a C index price that is basically every single day. I think today we closed at $1.84. So we
has that fluctuated a lot over the call the past?
Yeah, it's been
decade or so. It's just constantly up and down.
Just more the last 3 years has been a bit of a roller coaster with the pandemic, and if you've ever seen the coffee harvesting, it's a lot of people in a small, sorting and and sort of producing coffee and fermentation and bagging things, and two guys sharing a bag on the shoulder, so social distancing was very tough for that particular industry. And obviously, they don't have a great deal amount of medical aid if COVID does rip through a sort of a town or a village. So, so that really put the brakes on production for a while. But no, we're very particular about where we buy from. We only buy from family-owned farms.
Yep.
We only buy from sustainably sort of accredited farms. It's a little bit sketchy. When I say sketchy, there's so many different sustainability accreditations you can get now. It's like, which one do you choose? Like, there's all different organisations going, ours is the most authentic, But they're all okay. Like, sort of if you do your homework, and again, you can do your homework with the power of the internet. So, but a lot of it comes from relationships. You actually build up the trade relations, and buy from reputable growers year on year, and then there's the really, really rare kind of weird funky stuff that we love buying. Really small amounts, much more expensive, and we buy geisha coffees and really interesting fermentation techniques and really rare sort of cup of excellence coffees. And they're usually auctioned online.
Wow, okay.
So you log onto these auctions and they start the bidding at a price per pound.
What kind of price difference are we looking at for that kind of stuff compared to what's?
So You buy so the way the C index price works. So if you buy a particular coffee, it's C plus. So you're paying the $1.84 per pound.
Yep.
Plus $1.50, right? Which becomes, do the maths for me, $3.20, $3.30.
Yeah.
So per pound, right? So that's kind of normal-ish.
Yeah.
You know, $4, $5 a pound. $6 is getting kind of fancy, but on some of these auctions they get up to 80, 90, $100 a pound. Like,
Shit.
and that's the very top of the top. That's like, so the Esmeralda geishas coming out of Panama, they get right up there now. So that means one sack can be like 10 grand, where instead of, yeah. So, and then, but what some people do too, like two roasters might team up and buy it, and then we split it, and then do little Christmas edition VIP, you know. But they could be, that's where you see your $60 coffees.
Got it.
So
okay.
That's what they're doing. They're buying crazy shit like that, and then they're grinding it up and selling them as $50 cappuccinos, or $100 little gold limited edition tins in retail and things like that.
Right.
A lot of it's, I mean, hey, they're beautiful coffees. Like they are, if you went side by side, like one of them next to a normal one, you'd be like, whoa, this is pretty crazy. The amount of sort of, you know, fruit flavour and texture, and like it's really noticeable. It's not a myth.
It's that price for a reason.
Yeah, but it's a bit like sort of building a wine list. Like, you know, how many $3,000 bottles he's selling in a restaurant.
Yeah,
but you got to kind of, it's nice to have one on the list, but you know, the $75 bottles are moving all day long. Like that's kind of, we you know, your bread and butter's in that sort of main range, because again, how we've built our business is by building a range of coffees that businesses want to buy.
Yeah.
You know, like we're designing it to help, you know, cafes like Milligram, like really good blends, really good singles at good price, that's easy to barista, you know, easy to prepare, they taste good all day long. So some roasters go really hard on that really unique kind of stuff. We do a little bit of it, but our, like I said, our bread and butter is we're a B2B wholesaler, and so most of our buying is basically to aid that.
Because when you describe that kind of high end coffee, similar to a wine list, like having like a $3,000 bottle of wine on your list. I mean, even wine has a ticking clock at the end of the day when it comes to how long it's going to be, you know, aging in that barrel for. The ticking clock on a roasted coffee bean has to be well shorter. Weeks.
If that, like, if I'm going to buy, if you're going to buy a tin of geisha, gosh, you'd want it for $100 for, you know, 0.75 a pound, 250, 300 grams in the metric. I mean, you wouldn't want too many days on it. It'd have to be under a week for sure. And so what they do is they take what do you call it? Expressions of interest.
Okay.
So you go, I'll buy a bag, and when they've done it all, when you've got enough to make a batch, they'll roast the batch and send them out. That's what we do.
Right.
So it's so we take expressions of interest and then punch them out, so everyone gets it the same day, same roast date.
Yep.
But I mean it's cool. Like it's exciting, and it's, tell you what's not cool is being the roaster when they hand you a bag of $2,000 beans and you're like, okay, no Instagram, no email, no music. Like, this is time to concentrate. Like, if I burn this one, there's no second chances. That's always a little tricky. But it's you know, that's all part of it.
And what do you see down the line when it comes to the business with Common Room and Milligram? I mean, you just said that Milligram's ticked over 1 year.
Yeah.
Common Room is now, I mean, as a brand, it's what, 4 years? No.
Well,
how long?
Yeah. Well, we arrived in February. February the 10th, 2016. Common Room's company was formed. So it's so we're 7 years old as a organisation. Common Room's going well. It's a cool place to work. Our team's really settled. We love what we do. We've got a really talented group at the moment. What we always have, and we've got this new facility. So we've just got this new sort of breath of fresh air in our lungs, and we've just opened a collaborative cafe in Texas, in Austin, with a group called The Collective, which they do these sort of high-end gym kind of WeWork things. We've got a sister cafe there. We've got a satellite roasting facility over in Brooklyn, which is kind of cool. So got some stuff, popping up on the East Coast, and we're fortunate enough to be able to get that roasted on that side of the coast, and so get it to our customers quicker there. We've got a bunch of stuff in Hawaii, which is really interesting.
Okay.
I think being a surf kind of place, Hawaii, they sort of resonate with Australians, and we met these guys through a collab that we did with one of the surf brands here, and he owns a bunch of cafes there. So we met him through that, and that's been going pretty well. So they're up to 5 sites, and then obviously the e-com stuff's good, and I don't know, it's really nice to see post-pandemic, everyone out and about enjoying themselves, and cafes opening, and people really enjoying hospitality again, and there's so many ads for chefs and all this kind of stuff, like in the newspapers. Like, it's definitely alive again. It's pretty dark there for a while, but so that's really pleasing that people are ringing us up saying, I'm opening a cafe, like I've bought my machines, like let's go. So that's cool, but it's been I think just I wouldn't say more of the same for Common Room, but we're obviously just bedding into this new facility, and I've got some new partners involved in the business who are really, really dynamic guys, and they've got some really cool ideas and great contacts. So we'll be utilising those. And I guess Milligram is kind of, that's just, 1 year old it's a baby.
Yeah.
This thing. It's crazy to think that we've had the amount of bodies through the door that we've had in 12 months. It's really pleasing. It's nice to do food and wine and like all the things that we love about Melbourne's cafe scene.
Yeah.
Great breakfast and table service, and
it's definitely something that's just, even since I moved to the US about almost 13 years ago now, like originally the cafe scene, like the coffee scene, yes, like you get your drip coffee, that's fine, some decent ones here and there, but I've noticed such a difference in the last decade. A lot of that being heavily influenced by the Australian cafe that has a lot of them have started to pop up all over the country.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like this term Australian cafe, I think it's a little bit overused.
Okay.
I think the Australians in their cafe scene. We're not. Are we doing anything different? Not really. Like certain things matter to cafe owners in Australia. We love the sort of design element, and we love breakfast and breakfast culture and all that goes with that. So the coffee just fits in perfectly to that breakfast culture. We love design, we love great music. Like, we've got great, similar to California, Australia's got great produce, good bread, good fruit and veg, great meat. So California is kind of very similar. What's really pleasing here is that we've got is the rise of the sort of auxiliary products. So now there's much more better bakers around.
Yeah.
There's more chais and matchas and turmerics and alternate milks. And when we first started 7 years ago, we're like, where's all the bakers? Like, where's the 50 gourmet bakeries around here that we're, who are we going to buy the bread off? So that's been so sort of the rising tide has floated all boats a bit with that. With Common Room, we've been telling everyone about, back in Melbourne, the cafes are like this, and in Sydney they're like this, and it's so wonderful because. But now it's like, do you know what? I'm sick of telling them. Let's show them.
Yeah.
So when this site came along, and it took me back to the Woodstock days. I was like, okay, here we go again. And that chicken sandwich here, the grilled chicken ciabatta.
It is good.
That's the Woodstock staple. That was the very first thing on our menu in Armidale back in 2003, and it didn't disappoint then. And and they are rolling off the line now. It's good. So no, we're happy, and we've got and obviously being this outdoor sort of patio that we're sitting here tonight, now that the weather's turning and the summer's upon us, hopefully, we'll have a really good summer, and hopefully go from strength to strength.
I love it. Well, Ed, thank you. Thanks for sharing with us, mate.
No worries.
It's been a pleasure, and hopefully in the future you'll be back in Portland or wherever they are having the the finals again, and you take out number one.
They've actually ceased the tournament, so we can go down. We don't have to defend. We actually don't have to defend it anymore, which is quite good. So we're immortally second place. But,
fantastic.
No, thanks for having me. It's been great to catch up, and it's always nice to chat.
Awesome. Thanks, mate.
No worries.